Hi, folks, I'm Peter Lemieux with Rounding Third. I tell baseball stories. My story today, I'm going to describe the most important baseball game ever played. I feel so strongly about this story that I think this particular game should be taught in American history classes because its ramifications were much larger than just a baseball game. It was not a playoff. It was not a World Series. It was not an All-Star game. But it had an immense impact on the United States of America. So first I want to describe the scenario we enter into. Then I'll talk about the game. The scenario is 1948 United States of America. World War II had ended. All the men who fought in the war had returned home, and they had gotten employed, and they started making babies. So many children, we called them the baby boomers. That was 1948 and a few years before and after for sure. Baseball was the primary entertainment for the average American. The National Football League was just basically a semi-pro league. The NBA was not anywhere noticed by anyone. What the heck? They had a team in Fort Wayne, Indiana. The interesting thing is, the NBA was all white. There were a couple of black players in the National Football League, but no one noticed. We lived in a segregated country. During World War II, soldiers fought in segregated units. Black people and white people didn't mix. That wasn't just in the South, where there are horrible laws, but it was throughout the country. And baseball had this incredibly unfair gentleman's agreement where owners said they would never sign a black player. That ended in 1947 when the Dodgers signed Jackie Robinson. It was merely a few months later, relatively unnoticed, the Cleveland Indians signed a great player, Hall of Famer, named Larry Doby. These two men had to fight an amazing amount of prejudice, anger, and ridiculous difficulties, being the only black players. Now, the Dodgers did add another player at the end of the year who then left the team. But the color barrier, we thought, had been broken. Enter into my story, 1948. Obviously, the color barrier had not been broken. With the exception of the St. Louis Browns, who at the end of 1947 signed two black players and then immediately cut them when they didn't get the increased attendance. We entered 1948 with only two black players. The Dodgers signed another one named Roy Campanella. So the Dodgers had two players. The Indians had one. In all of baseball, the only three people who were black who could play in the major leagues. So it was, in my mind, clear that although these guys were playing, the color barrier had not been broken. What we really needed was, somewhere along the line, some black players had to prove that they could help win titles. Enter in our hero of the moment, the 1948 Cleveland Indians. Very unsuspecting hero for sure. The Cleveland Indians had been a team since 1900. They were called the Cleveland Spiders, changed their name to the Indians, actually to honor a Native American player that was on their team, was the first Native American player. And in honor of him, they changed their name from the Spiders to the Indians. So the Cleveland Indians enter 1948. 1900 to 1948, they had been in one World Series. This is not a winning franchise, right? That was back in 1920. Now it's 28 years later, and the Indians have amassed a pretty competitive team. Their player manager, a guy by the name of Lou Boudreau, ended up batting .355 as a shortstop manager, won the league's MVP. They had three guys who knocked in over 100 runs. On the other side of the ball, they had a great pitching staff. They had three guys who almost won 20 games. Two guys won 20 games. Bob Feller, probably the best known, won 19. At the end of the season, this team had the highest batting average, the lowest ERA, and the best fielding percentage. And the Cleveland fans just got behind this, as you can't imagine it. They hadn't seen a World Series in 28 years. They'd been through a world war, and now this team is winning. Well, they didn't run away with the league by any means. They had to compete with the perennial New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox. This was a three-team race right down to the end. So enter the game I want to tell you is the most important game ever played. In July of 1948, the Indians signed their second black player. This was, by most people's thoughts, ridiculous. They signed a 42-year-old rookie named Satchel Paige. And of course, the general audience was, the guy is too old. The only games he's ever played were in the Negro Leagues. This is a waste of money to bring this guy in. Enter August 20th, 1948. The Cleveland Indians are going to play a home game. Satchel Paige is announced as the starting pitcher. Now, building up to this game, the Indians had been on a hot streak. Their last three games, they have won by pitching shutouts. So they have three games without allowing a run. Satchel Paige, at 42 years old, in the midst of a very close pennant race, is going to pitch against the Chicago White Sox. Now I'm going to tell you why this game is so important. People didn't believe he could pitch at 42 years old. However, the fans in Cleveland were so excited about this team. Get this, 78,382 people attended this game. This to today is the largest attendance of any regular season baseball game in the history of baseball. On a Friday night in August in Cleveland, Ohio, to watch this guy, Satchel Paige, start a game against the White Sox. Further pressure, this team hadn't allowed a run for 3 straight games. Here is how the game progressed. Like most games of its time, it went fast. The whole game took 1 hour and 50 minutes. Now, there's no national media, but there are 78,000 people there. So Satchel takes the field and gets the White Sox out in the first, second, and third inning. However, the White Sox pitcher is also pitching well, and the Indians don't get any runs either. Top of the fourth inning, a walk, nobody's out, and a single. The runner on first is going to third. However, Larry Doby, the black center fielder, throws him out at third. So instead of first and third with nobody out, the White Sox now have a man on first with 1 out, and Satchel gets out of the inning. Bottom of the fourth, 1 out, man in scoring position. A single brings in the first run of the game. Who got the single? Larry Doby. Seeing a trend? By the way, that fourth inning was the only run that scored in the game. That fourth inning was the only time the White Sox even came close to scoring against Satchel Paige. In the sixth inning, with 2 outs, the White Sox got a double. They did not get anyone on base for the last 3 1/3 innings. Satchel Paige retired 10 straight batters. He finished the game with a 3-hit shutout and a 1-0 victory, with the offense being provided by their black center fielder. And the Indian fans were sure that this was going to be the year. When the game ended, Satchel Paige left the mound with a 5-1 record and an ERA of 1.33. My friends, he's 42 years old, playing against people that he probably had children older than the players he's playing against. It proved to people that black people deserve to be in the game. Now, the rest of the story is the Indians ended up the season tied for first with the Boston Red Sox and had to win a playoff game, which they did. They went to the World Series and had to play the Boston Braves from the National League. But they took care of them in 6 games and won the World Series. Now, in terms of just baseball, that's the last time the Indians have won a World Series. By the way, if you want to get the whole story of the Indians, which is a marvelous story, there's a book called Our Team by a fellow named Luke Eplin. It is a marvelous story to follow the 1948 Cleveland Indians because it's wonderful. But my point is this. The season ended. Even though Jackie Robinson had now finished his second year in the majors, there were only 4 black players on 2 teams. But here we have the world champions with this great center fielder named Larry Doby and Satchel Paige at 42 years old making a significant contribution. Eyes started to change. I want to remind you, in the civil rights movement, this all occurred before the civil rights laws, before Martin Luther King, before all of the things that our society had to go through. Baseball started it with Jackie Robinson and certainly with the Cleveland Indians, Larry Doby, and Satchel Paige. Because of that, anybody interested in segregation, racism, and how America was ingrained in it and had to somehow figure out a way out will look at this history and say, it was baseball. It was baseball that started this going. I'll believe that till the day I die. I hope you folks agree with me. That makes this game, with 78,000 paid fans, the most important game that baseball ever saw. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Like and subscribe. Tell me your stories, okay? Tell me what you think about this whole situation. Have yourselves a great day, and I'll look for you the next time around.